Russia says they're ready to hold talks with the U.S. over a possible prisoner swap involving Griner.
Moscow's foreign minister says they're prepared to discuss the matter after Griner was sentenced to 9 years yesterday for drug smuggling. Moscow correspondent Stuart Smith joins us with the latest. Stuart, where do negotiations between the U.S. and Russia stand now? I understand that's going to be pretty private moving forward.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The Kremlin emphasized that channels were discussed back last year between President Biden and President Putin about the exchange of prisoners, of course, before all of this with Brittany Griner came about. And back then, these channels were created at the presidential level to discuss exactly this topic. The Kremlin insists that we should go back to a place where these discussions are happening through that channel and not through what the Kremlin called megaphone diplomacy, that the Foreign Minister here, Sergey Lavrov, has emphasized quiet diplomacy as opposed to public methods of discussion. He's saying that once the Americans have already made that mistake, suddenly deciding to speak publicly to resolve these issues, the suggestion being that it would be a mistake to try to do that again. In terms of where we are now, there are two reasons that this may not be the final outcome for Brittany Griner. The first is that indeed these prisoner exchange discussions are ongoing. The second is that the lawyers now have 10 days to appeal that decision, and they say they are going to. Now, if a new trial starts, it's not clear whether that would affect the ability for a prisoner exchange to take place. She has already been sentenced, and that was always the prerequisite for some kind of exchange. In the middle of a new trial, well, the government might not like an exchange to take place until that second appeal has been determined. This all comes as another Russian citizen, Alexander Vinik, has been moved from Greece to the United States. He's wanted in America for dubious financial IT schemes and money laundering.
Stuart, Griner's lawyers say they will appeal. Can you just describe what that process is going to look like and what happens to Griner while that plays out? Because she is being sent to a penal colony, which I'm actually curious about that as well, because we know opposition leader Alexei Navalny was also sent to a penal colony. What are the conditions going to be like for her?
Yeah, so first of all, she's currently in the Moscow region in a Khimki jail. This is something which she's expected to stay there. So the same place where she ended up in February and has been throughout all of this. She's going to stay there, first of all, until we know for sure whether an appeal is taking place or not. And if an appeal does go ahead, she's likely to stay in that jail until that appeal has finished. And her lawyers said yesterday that they believe she is being well treated, despite all of the faults they suggest there are in the Russian justice system. She says at least she is being treated well by the jail system here in Russia. However, prison colony is indeed a different matter. It's not unusual for prison to be taking place in a colony. They happen right across Russia. Alexei Navalny, for example, is a few hundred miles east of Moscow. He also has few complaints about the type of captivity he's in. It does seem to be the case that those under large international scrutiny do seem to end up with the better conditions, but for sure, prison colonies are not nice places for the standard Russian citizen.